Alright, we are in turn of the century number 6 for your Ed puzzle here. We're going to get into some leisure activities. We're going to talk about bicycles and women, amusement parks, spectator sports, and Negro leagues. Alright, so this time period connects to what we talked about with the labor unions. And again, I've made note of this before. People have leisure time. Leisure time is what you guys kind of might have a lot more of now, but you don't really have stuff to do because you're stuck at home. Leisure time is time outside of work. So people in the labor movement wanted an 8-hour workday, 8 hours of sleep, and 8 hours of leisure time per day. All right. So what people started to do was they went to amusement parks. And amusement parks in bigger cities weren't necessarily ones where you had to pay like $35 to get into for the day. You might have paid a low fee or no fee at all, and then you go in and you either watch or have fun and do certain things and stuff. Bicycling became pretty cool, a cool thing to do. They played tennis. They read books. We'll talk about dime novels. And then there were spectator sports that became a huge part of society. And we'll talk about some of those that were extremely popular at the turn of the century. If you're on my notes, take a minute and watch this. This is Luna Park, which is Coney Island. And this was right at the turn of the century in 1903. You guys will see here, especially this part where they're coming down the slide, that they don't allow you to do that anymore because count how many people actually come down the slide. If you go to an amusement park now and you do something like this, whether it be a water slide or whatever, normally they wait till you're like out of the pool area at the bottom before the next person can go. That was not the case. They didn't have those restrictions and regulations in 1903. Bicycles became a huge thing, and these big wheels here became popular. One of the things that we're not accustomed to these days is women actually in the late 1800s had to have a male relative accompany them wherever they went. All right, so they had to have somebody with them, and it had to be a male relative. And if it wasn't, they were seen as promiscuous. But it was the bicycle that actually gave them a little bit of freedom here. And you guys can see these bikes here, these women's bikes, because this bar hangs low. And the reason for that is it was easy for them to step over with their dress without being revealing. Susan B. Anthony, you guys should all know Susan B. Anthony. She was a suffragette. That means she fought for women's right to vote. She said, "Woman is riding to suffrage on the bicycle." Not everybody agreed with her, though. Let's take a look at what this person wrote in an editorial to the newspaper. "I think the most vicious thing I ever saw in all my life is a woman on a bicycle. And Washington is full of them. I had thought that cigarette smoking was the worst thing a woman could do. But I have changed my mind." It goes on a little bit, but I don't have the whole thing. So you can see that men did not like this because one thing it was doing, it was giving women a little bit more freedom. So not only were African Americans and Mexicans and other types of European immigrants second-class citizens, but so were women. And remember, women didn't gain the right to vote until 1920. But what we get is a mass production of bicycles. And what's going to end up happening is it's going to change the way women see themselves. It's going to give them a little bit more confidence. And what's going to happen is it's going to change their attire. Attire is the way they dress. It's going to become popular for daily wear. So what we see is normally at this time it was very uncommon for women to show their ankles. Their ankles were basically seen as objects, and we talk about women being objectified and those types of things. Well, throughout history, normally the dresses of women have gotten higher and higher and higher every time there's some type of movement. Well, this was one of the first movements that raised the dress up a little bit, and we'll see that attire on the next slide here. Women no longer needed a chaperone with them at all times. So you guys can see here, they would wear these like big pants And this would become extremely popular, women wearing pants, and they thought that this was crazy because women should be wearing dresses. That was the mindset. So they wore, most of the time they wore socks with flats, and then these big baggy pants, and they had names. I'm not sure what it is. You could Google it. Would be kind of like tucked in there. They might be something like knickers, is what they call like the baseball style pants that are kind of like that. And that's Knickers is how you spell that. And bicycles became so popular that they used them in advertisements like this right here. And you can read into this advertisement. Like, you could see that this guy might have been hitting a ramp back here, and it shows his chain coming off his bike, and the woman is being more safe and cautious by walking her bicycle. I don't know why that. But basically, this guy wrecked his bike. He's got stiffness. He's got aches, sprains, and bruises. And this ointment here or whatever is going to help him. And you guys can see it was part of pop culture and paintings, with women being on bicycle, not having chaperones, being out by themselves, those types of things. So that was bicycles. Next, we have spectator sports. All right. Leisure activities provided Americans with relief from crowded urban life and occupied their increased time outside of work. So what they got was they went to games, and they listened to games on the radio. The most popular at the time was by far baseball. After that, it was boxing or prize fighting. Then there was golf and tennis. And these two down here were mainly for your upper class citizens because you had to belong to a club to go play there. Boxing was more lower class. Baseball was basically for everybody. That's why it was called America's Game. All right, so baseball, and there's some stuff about when baseball was founded and those types of things. The National League was actually founded in 1876, while the American League was founded in 1900. The first World Series, which was the game between the American League and the National League, was in 1903, and that was won by the Boston Pilgrims over the Pittsburgh Pirates. And that game was actually the best of a 9 series, not best of 7. Baseball is something that I miss dearly, and I'm sure a few of you do as well. On the right side, I don't know why they put second base here. Second baseman should actually be over here. That bothers me a little bit. Baseball actually got some of its roots were in something called cricket. And I don't understand cricket. I'm not English or Indian, and I don't really understand it all that much, but it's very similar to baseball in the way that it's played. It's got a pitcher, it's got a batter, it's got bases, those types of things. But baseball becomes its own unique game. And there was also this other game called Rounders, which is kind of difficult to understand as well. Well, what had happened is discrimination found its way to these sporting events. And most of us know, and April 15th was just a few days ago, you have this guy over here, which I'm sure most of you know. His name is Jackie Robinson, and he broke the color barrier. However, this guy off to the left here, his name was Moses Fleetwood Walker. And if you do a nice Google search on him, you'll find out that he actually was one of the guys that was playing Major League Baseball before Jackie Robinson was. But what had happened, and there's a story about him that you guys can Google and stuff, and some of the people on the other team who were white and racist didn't want to play because Moses Fleetwood Walker, a black guy, was on the lineup and refused to play. So what ended up happening is we get something called Negro Leagues, and this is where African Americans would play baseball, and you had whites playing in the major leagues and then African Americans playing in the Negro Leagues. And then in the 1940s, Jackie Robinson breaks the color barrier and plays for the Brooklyn Dodgers. And then Larry Doby actually is the second African American to play in the majors. He was in the American League and played for none other than the Cleveland Indians. So some pretty interesting stuff here. If you guys are interested, you can look into taking a sports history class and look into that a little bit more. We're going to get into our last video in the next one.